Welcome to the Two Grumpy Bastards podcast, where feelings aren't felt and snowflakes melt. Buckle up, it's gonna be a bumpy ride.
They painted over ants.
Well, hey, before we start, Russ, before you comment on that opening song that you apparently didn't like very much, I'm going to do something for our YouTube video watchers, which I hope is everybody that listens to the podcast, because you get extra treats on the video. And then for those of you that just do the YouTube, you get a longer podcast because we do stuff on the podcast that we can't do on YouTube because we'll be sanctioned if we do. So hold on. Here it comes. I'm going to do the dramatic entrance through the mushroom cloud. Ready?
For half a second, I thought you were going to moon us.
Here it comes. I was goofing around earlier and I figured I could do that. Anyway, so yes, the classic, Isn't It Time from 1978, The Babies. Oh, John Waite, who went on to a little bit of a solo career in the 80s. Russ didn't like that song. That was a classic badass song.
I'm sure that the song would have been a little bit better. It'll probably get better when the singer hits puberty.
John Waite was the man. The Babies, classic stuff. 1970s rock. My thing of that's a perfect song because it starts out and then it immediately jumps into a high place and does the crescendo, little brass. Love that song. That's a perfectly written.
When you said 1970s, that explained a great deal about.
You watch yourself. You watch yourself. Music has gotten better. Tell me music has gotten better since classic rock in the 70s. You're fucking wrong. You're wrong.
The 80s music was a hell of a lot better.
Oh my God. 70s soul, 70s classic rock. Nope.
Yeah, that must be why I believe it is that the Detroit Tigers game, they decided to burn all those albums.
That was disco, dude. That was disco.
70s, no,
that wasn't music. That wasn't music. Come on now.
The 70s were kind of like the Carter years, very forgettable.
Okay, you just fucked yourself because every opening song is going to be 1970s classic rock from now on.
And I will shit all over all of them.
The podcast goes into the dust. That's going to be 1970s. Before it is dust in the wind, it is yet before the continents shift. When Grodd or whatever comes and wipes out all species by plunging into the Pacific Ocean and causing tsunamis and tidal waves and the poles to shift.
And just get yourself some Superfly collars that you can lift up. Go watch some Dolomite.
Oh, man. I'm going to do some like Gordon Lightfoot just to piss you off next time. All right, Russ, how you doing, man? Welcome to, by the way, welcome to the Two Grumpy Bastards. Bastards, I can't even say it.
One of them's a pastor.
One of us is a pastor, one of us isn't. And one of us is a bastard and one of us isn't. What a coincidence. But same guy. Yeah. I got a lot on my curriculum vitae, apparently. Welcome to the Two Grumpy Bastards podcast. I'm a little amped. I've been drinking coffee and tea all afternoon. Just got back from the gym, so I'm probably a little squirrely here. And we're going to talk about a few things today, but I am the producer, executive producer, graphic designer, store owner, and co-host. Oh, and what else do I do? Oh, I'm also the technician and the engineer of this podcast. And Russ is my co-host.
Yeah, I just kind of show up when he tells me to.
But you're good for a topic or two and give us some incredibly detailed conversation. So Russ is the Protestant Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, you got to be careful though, because one of the folks that I sent the podcast to, and this is a shout out to you, Francis, said that he didn't like it because we agreed with each other too much. We didn't come out doing fisticuffs and arguing back and forth and calling each other names. Maybe we need to do a podcast where we do nothing but argue with each other.
I mean, we could come up with some topics. I mean, 1970s rock. Let's see. Well, we did college basketball, college football, or basketball, football. Yeah, we could come up with some topics. We disagree on a lot of things, actually.
Yeah, but we need to. We'll spin for one podcast. We'll spin it up, and really get the spice going.
Yeah, then they can see our debating skills, where you just hammer away, chip away, and I just call you a stupid motherfucker. So.
Yeah. Well, hey, I don't have a problem with
that. Hey, I just a real quick anecdote before we get going. I got called a transphobe this week to my face. I did. No, it was kind of cool. because
what happened?
Well, I haven't had any feedback from anybody in the trans community for a while. This grocery store that I shop at, there's a dude there who exhibits feminine characteristics, but the person's really nice and not in your face, and I don't care. Nice person, very good clerk, very pleasant. We always have a nice conversation because that's who I am. I'm respectful, even if I disagree. As long as you're in your lane and I'm in my lane. But yeah, I was having a conversation, and it wasn't even spectacularly controversial. I was just talking about some of the things that were going on out there. I'd mentioned in a group of folks about how I'm dismayed at the one of the things that is a trigger for me is watching news or getting on Twitter, because I get so fucking pissed off at the way this country has slid into the ocean. Russ and I were discussing before the pod how much has changed in just the little bit of time that we've been doing podcasts, and the 51 episodes as of today that we've been doing podcasts. How much has changed? How much more the slippery slope has become a plunge into hell. And so anyway, this person came up to me later and said, I don't really appreciate what you were talking about, because I have a brother who's transitioning. I said, oh, okay.
Good
Great.
For you.
I'm not saying anything mean about your brother. I'm talking about a political movement. And I guess if you're a transphobe, you wouldn't understand. Transphobe like you wouldn't understand. That was the next sentence. And I go, oh my God. So I'm going to paraphrase, but I'm quoting pretty closely. I said, only because you and I have a history and I like you as a person, I'll explain something to you. I'm not a fucking transphobe. I guarantee you I could throw your brother through a wall in about 3 seconds. So I have nothing to fear from your brother. Nothing. Okay. I don't fear your brother. I don't fear transsexuals. What I feel like the trans community is about the fact that they're all suffering from a mental health disorder and or delusion and or a sexual fetish. It's not it. We spend way too much time on it. This country is completely wrapped up in it right now. It's ridiculous. They're less than 1% of the population. Truly, I don't care what the stats of the Generation Zers say. Truly, true transsexuals are that. Obviously, kids should not be exposed to them if their parents don't want that, and they shouldn't be transitioning without parent approval until they're 18 years old. That's where I stand on it. What are your questions? How does that make me a transphobe? I said they could do what they want to do, but now their politics, including something we're going to be talking about here soon, including what just passed in Washington State, has gotten so ridiculous that they're really setting the agenda for the entire United States of America right now. They really are. The trans community, this community of people that I think have mental health disorders or at least delusional, and are chock full of the biggest narcissists I've ever listened to or seen in my life, has set the agenda for this country. Now this person is, I think, a nice person, but she called me a transphobe to my face. I wasn't angry when I said that. And her reply to all of that, I was hoping for like a reasonable rebuttal. And she goes, fuck you, and walks away.
See, as she walked away, I'd be like, oh, call me a poopy face. It's works so much better.
I just hate the language. We've let the left redefine the English language. They're in the schools, they're under education, they own the media, Hollywood, blah, 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 blah. They own everything in this country that has a system of power, including politics now.
So she used the transphobe thing to try to shut debate up. She was hoping to shame you into silence. And
right.
People are finding out more and more, and we'll talk about this in just a little bit. I'm sure with still in regards to this topic, is that they're trying to take over the culture wars simply by screeching the loudest.
Yeah.
Simply hoping that people will be ashamed and not want to be seen as mean. So they use insults like that because they can't argue on the merits of it. They don't want to argue on the merits of it. They simply just want you to be like, yeah, you're pretty smart. You're pretty empathetic, as opposed to, hey, let's have a discussion about why you want to upend 150,000 years of biological and societal evolution.
Yep. No, I think you're right. And unfortunately, the politicians are all about it. And I've really we're going to talk about what's going on in Washington State. We're going to do kind of a local podcast. Russ is local, my local. We'll talk about Washington State and the big issue of the day up here. Well, there's a lot because the governor just signed a whole bunch of bills into law.
You have a champ up there.
Oh my fucking God. Well, hey, notice if you want to express your opinion on that, there's a new product in the 2grumpybastardsmerchandise.com store, Comrade Inslee. wear those proudly. There'll be more about Inslee because I've lost it. I've fucking lost it. It's gone from me just being irritated to me being incredulous to me being angry to me going, these aren't people who really have an agenda that they care about. These are evil fucking people.
Yep.
I believe I'm seeing, I am not an apocalypse freaking one of those Armageddon believers, literal Bible thumping literalists. I'm definitely a Christian. I'm not into all that stuff, but my God, the amount of evil I'm seeing, it smells like end time sometimes. It's hard for me not to start going, geez, Louise, man, it is crazy. Because we're going to talk about something that I believe is pure evil here in just a second.
Well, and there's two things with that. First of all, those who do evil never think they're evil. Everybody has always felt they were on the side of good. Nobody ever rare is the person who comes in rubbing his hands and cackling maniacally about, I'm going to do this evil thing right now. My second thing is a question to you, and I know this has got constitutional issues. There had to be congressional involvement and all that other stuff. But what are your thoughts on the Greater Idaho movement that is looking to encompass part of Western Washington and Western Oregon?
Oh, but it'd be Eastern.
Eastern Washington, Eastern Oregon. Are you up on that at all?
I am. I have a lot of friends that live in Idaho. I went to school in Spokane, Washington, which is right on the border. One of the schools I went to, college, is right on the border of Idaho. Knew lots of Idahoans, and I know a lot of people who have migrated from Western Washington. The Cascade Mountains runs down about a third to the left on the west. It forms a natural geographic and climate and topographic separation between what we call Western and Eastern Washington. And the west 1/3 is Western Washington, and that's the green, wet farm logging side. And Eastern Washington is picture the Inland Empire in California. Mm-hmm. A lot like that. Yakima all the way over to the Spokane, and you get up north in Okanagan country. It's beautiful and pine mountains, but it's dry. The southern eastern part of our state is all wheat farms, rolling hills as far as you can see. So it looks like you're in the Midwest. So Washington's very diverse as far as its topography. I can tell you, once you get over those mountains, once you hit, you can accept a couple of the tourist areas like Wenatchee and Chelan, which are up in the mountains. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful country, North Cascades. Once you get over there, you're talking cowboys and farmers. That's what you're talking. Ranchers and farmers. Really, that has always been what's going on over there. It is a highly conservative place in Washington State. I did a breakdown for us on the podcast a long time ago, but I think like if you take Eastern Washington as a whole, all the counties, it went something like 72% for Trump in the last election. Yeah. So that tells you how conservative it is compared to Western Washington, which just real quick, Russ, I'll describe it for folks that aren't familiar with it. Most of Western Washington land-wise is hugely unpopulated. I live in a county called Lewis County, which stretches east-west further than any other county in Washington State. It's a huge county. And from the Cascade Mountains over to the flat agricultural land. And it's very conservative as well. It's logging, farming, all that kind of stuff. The only really red areas in Washington start in Olympia, Tacoma has shifted that way somewhat, but Tacoma still maintains some conservatism all the way up areas. And all of it in Seattle. And then it hop, skips, and jumps to Portland. And then Bellingham, which is far north, is a liberal mecca. And it would be like a red sauce with a big old blueberry and some smaller blueberries in it. That's what it looks like. But the population center is all in that Puget Sound area in Seattle and Tacoma and Olympia. So their votes carry the day. We have a super majority, which is why we have what we have right now in the Senate, the state Senate, and the state House. And the governor, of course, Governor Comrade Inslee is a Democrat. We haven't had a Republican governor in something like 28 years or something. Yeah, so that's the layout of it.
Yeah, the Greater Idaho movement is looking to cleave off Eastern Washington, Eastern Oregon, even part of Southern Oregon, and join into Idaho. And it would be good, however, it's never going to happen because the Constitution specifically says that a state cannot be subdivided without the consent of Congress. Right. And since those areas would undoubtedly send Republican representation to Congress, the House, and definitely the Senate, there's no way that those areas will be allowed to cleave off, because it would give not the Senate, excuse me, because Idaho has 2 Republican senators, but it would give more Republican representation in the House.
Sure.
To Idaho, and the Democrats would just simply never allow it. It may be a cultural divide, but constitutionally, I don't think it's ever going to come to pass, no matter how much people petition for it, because Idaho itself, I believe the Constitution also says not only do you need the consent of Congress, but you need the consent of the states that are going to be subdivided. And so I don't see the Seattle and Portland, blue dots consenting to letting that land go.
Oh, hell no. I mean, you're looking at, all that agriculture in our end and Eastern Washington as well, which is a lot of Eastern Oregon is high desert.
What do they produce in Portland and Seattle? They produce nothing. So they would have nothing to contribute besides votes. Yeah,
they're consumers. And so they're fine with not representing the people that actually produce things. I mean, you can argue, oh, we have tech and we have Boeing. Fuck you. That's only because you have logging and you have the fishing industry, which has taken it in the chin, like logging did 20 years ago plus 30 years ago, and agriculture. That's what supports all these fucking idiots on their iPads, voting for the same people over and over again as our fair state. In my opinion, the most beautiful state in the continental United States, plunging into this chaos and this pit, and it affects everybody. I have not been to Seattle, where I lived, and I loved living for a lot of my adult years. I don't know, going on 3 years now. I haven't been there. I would be heartbroken to walk in downtown Seattle again, I think.
I believe that the beauty and natural productiveness of the geography works against the conservative cause in a way. What I mean by that is, yes, it's beautiful. It's got a lot of great stuff, but because of that, it draws, certain segments to it who then want to change it. If it was, flat and open as Kansas or Nebraska or, something like that, then liberals would not want to go there. But because it's got the coast, because it's got nice mountains, because it's a break from, some other areas, they'll flock to it and then they'll change it. I mean, California has a beautiful geography. The northern part of the state is very conservative. When I say northern, I'm not talking Sacramento and San Francisco. I'm talking Jefferson, California, so on and so forth.
Humboldt County, all that area, yeah.
Up near Mount Shasta and stuff. But because it's got so much to offer, it will draw people who can't otherwise produce in another area, and then they'll turn the place deep blue. It's what's happened to Colorado right now.
Right.
Is the Californians moving out of California because it's a shitty place, going to a nice place like Colorado and turning it into the same shitty place they just left.
Sure. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Somebody just walked in. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I think let's shift fire a little bit to what my subject du jour.
Bugaboo.
Yeah, so I want to talk about, I know you're familiar with it. It just passed the other day, it passed this week. Our Comrade Inslee signed a whole bunch of stuff into law. I don't like the vast majority of it, of course, being a libertarian. This one probably has me pissed off more than anything else, even more than the assault weapons ban that they're doing up here.
Because the assault weapons ban will never pass the court. Will never stand up in court.
I know that. This one, though, I'm not sure. So what we're talking about is Washington State Law it was Bill 5599. And what it does in a nutshell, and I got something I want to read you, Russ, just to make sure that you understand the gravity of this. I got a couple of things. 5599 on the 24th, of April 2023. They call this the Supporting Youth and Young Adults Seeking Protected Healthcare Services. Sounds kind of innocuous when you read it like that, but let me just kind of go through here and tell you, this comes out of, this is not me. What is my source here? Hold on. This comes from a source down in Clark County, which is down by Portland, just north of Portland, but still conservatives get whatever Vancouver, Washington is. This comes out of an article that they published on their webpage down there, clarkcounty.com, on their news deal, just to let everybody know we have some Clark County listeners. And it just breaks down not what the bill is, but what the bill or the law soon to be signed into, it was signed into law, says. So I don't know why this thing is fucking with me. The Washington House has passed a bill allowing shelters to keep runaway juveniles from their parents to get an abortion and or gender surgeries that include removing a girl's breasts or uterus. Although framed by proponents as a bill to protect youth suffering from abuse, 5599 only stipulates that the minors be seeking or receiving protected healthcare services for a homeless shelter or host home to avoid informing the parents or legal guardians as otherwise required by state law. Now, currently, and I'm just going to skip down to horrify you. Currently, if a child runs away, the shelter or the organization that records this has 24 to 72 hours, depending on the circumstances, to notify the parents. It provides, unless there's compelling reasons not to do so, like the child shows up with proof of abuse or something like that, rape allegations, things like that. This is completely not that. This is for kids literally saying my parents are keeping me from transitioning. Also adds youth seeking abortions, irreversible gender surgeries to the list of compelling reasons. The list of compelling reasons, like I said, used to be segregated to just like violence and abuse and those type of things. Now, supportive care grants to organization address the needs of youth. So this is going to cost the state on the outset 7.5 million, and then it looks like on some projections it's going to be an annual budget of around 50 to 60 million. Let me close this technical part by telling you what the state law defines as gender affirming care that is covered by this bill, that kids can run away and their parents have no rights to intercede. It's a long list, bear with me. Breast augmentation, chemical peel, dermabrasion, facial feminization surgeries, facelift, facial masculinization surgeries, forehead brow lift, genital modification, hairline modification, hair removal by electrolysis or laser, hysterectomy, lip enhancement, reduction of thyroid chondroplasty. That's, a tracheal shave for the Adam's apple. I always used to tell my soldiers on their safety briefing, check the Adam's apple. Rhinoplasty, skin resurfacing, liposuction, mastectomy, of course, penile implant, and voice modification. That is all of the things that this wonderful bill covers. And oh, by the way, shelters these kids if they want to get any of these things done, and they even speak the words that their parents are keeping them from having any type of gender modification. And of course, the abortions are now completely legal for these minors to go do under the auspice, under the care of the government. Okay, we just did a TGP Academy thing on fascism last week. Okay, our learn it from a couple of know-it-alls portion of this podcast and video series. Fascism at its ultimate, taking the I'm so angry I can't speak. Taking parental rights away from the most incredibly life-altering choice that can be made for a child or any adult. Actually trying to, and here I am going to say it, no matter how hard you try, you can't change nature to that extent. Okay? You can't. I would love to reverse my age, bro. I'd love to go back to about 35 years old. If there was a gerontology modification thing, I would probably do it. But this is crazy. This is fucking evil. This is what I'm talking about, evil. One of the state representatives is quoted for saying, "I hear you, I feel you, I support you." Are you out of your fucking mind? Nobody in the state, and we've had just as many issues with the education system and parents trying to be cut out by these so smart teachers, the C- students who decided to do something for a living that only made them work 180 days a fucking year. Yeah, I said that. My apologies to you good teachers out there. But this is the state of this state. That's what we are now. We're an abortion sanctuary, of course. I mean, that's the whole West Coast. But now there's a law passed. This is unspeakable to me. I mean, I'm not a parent of a human child. Okay. Huckleberry has always been okay being a dude. He never expressed any need to change his gender. But I know I'm being tongue in cheek here because this is shocking to me, Russ. Your thoughts?
Well, a lot of thoughts on this. First of all, the juvenile issue, since they're taking them away from parents who would normally be paying for these procedures, I'm assuming that the the sanctuaries that do this will pay for these gender altering drugs and surgical procedures, which means that it's going to fall on taxpayers. So taxpayers are going to end up paying for this. So what's the future ramifications 10, 15, 20 years from now when the detransitioners come back and decide to sue the state for making these life-altering decisions when they were adolescents? Is that going to be more tax money when you start seeing the advertisements? Where did you have gender surgery performed on you at the age of 15? Contact such and such law firm. I mean, that's coming probably within the next 2 decades.
Absolutely.
It's so much so that Europe, for example, has stopped allowing transitions, both drugs and surgical procedures, on minors, as it should be. Minors are not capable of a concept called legal consent. That a minor cannot consent to getting a tattoo or going to a strip club. So, it's because the brain hasn't developed. We've decided the age of 18 is adulthood. There's still some flex in that. You can't have a drink at the age of 18. I personally feel that if you're old enough to die for your country and mature enough to vote, you should be mature enough to have a drink. If
Fair enough.
If you're going to make it 21, make it 21. If you're going to make it 18, make it 18, whatever it is. Washington is not the only state doing this. California and Minnesota are doing similar versions of this. It's going to turn a lot of parents into a special interest group, and that's that would be one of the largest special interest groups and voting blocks out there. I'm not sure it's a good idea to make parents, because protection of offspring is one of the strongest biological instincts we possess.
Oh, sure.
Some will start to use the courts, but I fear for the day that this becomes violent, because there are some parents that will eventually, it's going to grow large enough where some parents are going to take stuff into their own hands. And then you're going to have a general revolt on your hands. And, what happens at that part? How's this going to be handled during divorce proceedings? When one parent doesn't want to do this and the other parent wants a trophy, because that's what a lot of this is. It's a lot of virtue signaling of, oh, look how tolerant I am. It's Munchausen by proxy. Look how tolerant I am because I have this child that I've agreed to flow my political agenda through because I was afraid of being called mean, or because I think that it shows I'm a good person. A lot of these, even the drugs, folks say, well, they're reversible. No, they're not. First of all, how can you even know that? We don't have any long-term studies on the effects of that. And common sense would tell you that you can't interrupt a course of raging hormones designed to progress natural biology and then just switch them back on like it's a light switch. It's not the way that these things work. You mentioned evil, and I think I talked about it a few minutes ago. Evil never thinks it's doing evil. Evil always thinks it's doing good. They're afraid that they're going to be seen as mean. They're reacting emotionally to this. I put a post on Facebook today about part of what's driving this is people want to feel as if they are part of a crusade of some kind that makes the world better. But they missed the civil rights movement. They missed the abolitionist movement. They missed the women's suffrage movement. They've missed a lot of stuff where we've made society better. So they're glomming onto the edge because I guess they feel that progress doesn't count unless they were participating in creating that history. It's a natural human drive towards
good points.
Wanting to be better, and because they can't do it, they're searching in the dark for anything that's gonna make them better. The abortion issue, I come back to minors you can't give a minor an aspirin in school without parental consent. I understand certain cases of like incest and abuse, absolutely, but there's things you can't give to children without parents filling out a stack of forms that are about an inch thick. But suddenly, because abortion is a political issue, they want to exclude the parents from these decisions. I think a lot of these children are going to have adverse reactions, and I don't necessarily mean physically. I mean emotionally, politically, mentally, etc. They're going to have adverse reactions as they get older and realize what's been done to them, what these people who claim to be acting in their interests actually did. And it'll be interesting to see what happens, because in California and Minnesota, for example, they're claiming the right to hold on to children that come from other states. Mm-hmm. That's going to affect the Interstate Commerce Clause, and that's going to start getting the federal government involved. What happens when this reaches a federal appeals court or the Supreme Court? Do states simply accept rulings that come down against them? You heard the wonderful, so fresh, so fresh, she's got so much face, AOC, talk about how she thought the Biden administration should ignore the abortion drug ruling. And I'm like, guys, that's what y'all were saying that Trump would do. And I can think of nothing more sure to ignite an actual civil war than, hey, I'm just going to ignore laws I don't like. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just going to interject and say, you don't know this yet, but our next edition of Two Grumpy Bastards Academy, we're going to, because that inspired me. She's inspired me twice now, AOC. God bless her. She's given us great content. Is going to be on the 3 branches of government and how they work. Because I learned that in junior high, or no, grade school, very, very plainly. Apparently, you have an elected official who has no idea how they work, and a lot of elected officials had no idea how they work. So we're going to give a primer on that. But anyway, go ahead. Do you have any more thoughts on the?
No, that was the main stuff. Is these people think they're trying to do good? They're just advancing their own political agenda because they're trying to find causes to glom onto. And I think part of it's reactionary. It's human nature to be oppositional.
Yeah.
The right thinks X is bad, therefore X must be good. The right thinks that the right thinks that saying minors should not permanently alter their bodies is bad, therefore it must be an effective good. And because a lot of people were scared of being called names by the trans movement and by trans allies, they kind of shut up. A book that I like it's written from a perspective of an alien race, and it says there's no such thing as human consensus. The local politics is often dominated by those who can shout the loudest, not necessarily by those who are in the majority. And right now, the trans movement is trying to shout the loudest. But as I like to jokingly refer to, the normies have started to fight back in a big way. And we can talk about that in a few minutes when we talk about Bud Light and whatnot. But the normal people have finally said, all right, we put up with this bullshit long enough. It's, now we're going to have to fight back because you won't leave us alone. And I think that's the biggest thing is so many of us, yourself, myself, others, we just want to be left alone. Mm-hmm. But these movements will not leave us alone because they feel that, basic societal standards are things to be torn down because they don't like what they feel is the arbitrary nature of them. And the people, there is nothing more dangerous in this world than someone who wanted to be left alone that was spurred into action.
Yeah. It's infected everything. My last appointment with the doc at the VA, when I was getting my screening, the nurse asked me, what are your preferred pronouns? And I go, you can call me sir. You can call me mister. Otherwise,
you acted a lot nicer than I would have.
I don't play that shit, and I can't believe the VA does either. I just, really. Anyway, I was actually, don't think I was distracted. I was listening, but I was doing box breathing because I know how I can be on these videos when I get upset, and I can use foul language that might get us thrown off of YouTube. This is unbelievable to me. The supermajority, and if anybody out there wants a list of all of it was I think 59 to 32. Let me actually pull that up because I think that's important. The Republicans are so outnumbered in the state that, and this comes from a guy, like I said, I always feel like I'm an apologist, but I'm not a Republican, man. And let's see, the final vote. Yeah, I was right on the money, 57 to 39. So by Washington state standards, that's pretty close, to be honest with you. Because of the supermajority, I think 19 were either not present or abstained from the vote. I bet you a bunch of those who abstained were Democrats who couldn't vote for it, but could not go along with their party. And,
because they get yelled at and get primaried.
Yeah, they get primaried. I'll break that down. If anybody wants the breakdown on that, I pulled everything down and I've been looking at it. I just haven't broke that part down yet because this one's big, and this one's going to be me probably driving to the Capitol and being involved in doing some live recording for the Two Grumpy Bastards from the protests. This is big enough for me, and I'm not a parent, but all my friends are, and I have, as you have, mentored a shit ton I've been in charge of people's lives who were somebody's kid. And I took that very, very fucking seriously, including some of our listeners and some of the people we've had on this podcast, our listeners like Ryan and Selmy and some of those guys that we were responsible for trying to train and prepare them for a career in the military. I've been a coach, I've been a teacher, I've been a lot of things. It means the world to me. And when I hear the pain and I do, I mean, I'm not making this up. It's not hyperbole. I don't play that shit. When I hear the pain from my friends or see their posts on Facebook and their fear of this, I got to tell you, I can think of probably half a dozen people that I know fairly well that are moving. They're out of here. They're fucking giving it up. They're doing the Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, we're out of here, we're going to Florida, thing. We can't handle it anymore like they did in California. It's unfortunate because we're leaving. What's going to happen though, Russ? It's just going to be such an overwhelming majority of people on the left that it's going to have a catastrophic failure of the West Coast. That's what it's going to take. It's going to be a zombie fucking apocalypse here. Yeah, well, that's what I was about to say is the people moving, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I understand the instinct to move. I'd probably do the same thing. There's no way I'd live in California. Believe it or not, you know how much I've apologized for stuck up for this state, how loyal I am.
The other issue is when you move, you cede the ground to the left because there's simply going to be more of them super concentrated there. And I hate saying this because I don't like the consequences of what will happen, but it's going to take California, Oregon, and Washington basically completely collapsing into chaos and anarchy, totally, economically, societally, culturally. It's going to take a total collapse before they wake up. I mean, I believe that, and look, I'm not saying Mexico's any great success. It's not. But I believe it was the PRC, the political party in Mexico, that ruled Mexico for like 78 years, something like that. And they had to take Mexico into a complete shithole before people woke up and said, whoa, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah.
If you remember, it took Jimmy Carter to bring about Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
It takes a lot. It took, I know folks don't like this, but it took Barack Obama, and it wasn't even anywhere near what the collapse is going to happen on the West Coast, but it took Barack Obama to bring about Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about how that reaction is going to be. I think people will vote based on their idealistic view until it affects them personally. Yeah. Once they start to see the impact of this stuff on themselves personally, then it's going to take a lot of soul searching to actually overcome some of their biases. Because there's a lot of people who they simply can't pull the lever for that Republican. It's like trying to, eat a block of poison or something. But eventually it may get to that point. I mean, take an example, New York City in 1992. I mean, New York City was a complete shithole, and it's kind of gone back to that. But because of how bad it was, that's the only reason they ever elected Rudy Giuliani.
Right.
There's no way he gets elected, 10 years earlier. So when the West Coast collapses into a malaise of homelessness, drug addicts, violence, where crime is affecting even the rich neighborhoods, that's what it's going to take before people finally say, maybe we need to go back. And it's not going to happen. It'd be a bumpy process because, a lot of people are so emotionally invested. They've got so much of their personal identity set into these politics. They're not going to go quietly, no matter how bad things get.
Yeah, I get you. And once again, folks, and we're going to break this down, Russ and I, here in the next month. Russ doesn't know yet. We're going to break down blue versus red geographically and how people are faring blue versus red economically, crime-wise, and all that kind of thing. I think it's important for people to understand that this is what happens when you put these children in charge. And by children, I mean mentally, emotionally, psychically, soul-wise. These are people who are incapable of making pragmatic, practical, and hard decisions. You mentioned earlier that they need something. They need something to worship, basically is the word, not your words, mine. That they need a cause, a cause célèbre, a cause du jour. Well, these are secular, atheist, mostly, at least agnostic people who are too big of pussies to serve in the military. So that eliminates two very positive things that you could put your energy and faith into. And so trying to look cool, it's just a thing, I get on Twitter and I see the people on Facebook and stuff like that. And I see the sycophants who add on to that. And I'm looking at these people and I'm comparing to people that I know, that I hold dear, that I consider friends or at least good acquaintances or people I like and admire. And I'm going, oh my God, why would you even want to be friends with these people? These are some of the worst people I've ever seen in my life. These are nasty, ridiculous, fucked off people. And it is. But guess what? They played the long game very, very well, while us nice guys sat on our hands and sat on our ass and tried to play nice. And guess what? I'm not calling for sedition. I'm not calling for any of this stuff, but what I am calling for is people to get off their ass. We got to fight back harder than they're doing it. We have to. Don't be intimidated by people calling you names, calling you a transphobe. People, you want to make fun of my faith? You go for it. I am so secure in my beliefs. Go for it. You want to have a discussion about why you don't believe in my faith? Wonderful. I'll give you a million reasons why I feel the way I do. And I'd love to have that discussion with somebody who doesn't, but go for it. We have to, it is time. You know what we are right now? And I don't, to bring faith into it, to bring a little Christian history. We are the Christians in Nero's circus. That's what we are, being fed to the lions again. It's always been that way with people of these types of beliefs, of moral standing beliefs. People on the left hate us because we're correct, because we represent daddy who told them what to do, okay? And they've rebelled against that, but now they're in charge, baby. Now they're in charge. And let me ask everybody out here in podcast land, are you better off? Do you think the country's better off now than it was under Trump? Or prior to fucking Obama? Are you better off? Do you think the country's in more moral shape or has a brighter future or any of that stuff? If you answer yes, you're out of your flipping mind.
This might be a good transition to one of the other controversies of the week, and that involves Bud Light and this person putting on woman face, Dylan Mulvaney. Bud Light really not understanding their core demographic, which the Bud Light, first of all, I don't drink beer to begin with. I don't care for beer.
Kool-Aid.
What's that?
Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Hey, Kool-Aid.
I haven't tried Kool-Aid in like a decade, but I do like it.
Oh, darn it.
But the folks that I do know that drink beer, they've always compared Bud Light to horse piss.
Right.
It's something you drink because you can't afford better beer. Which is usually college frat boys and rural country boys. That's who drinks Bud Light. The Americana kind of folks who don't have a lot of money. And right. Bud Light, not getting that that's their core demographic, decided to put on a person who essentially participates in a minstrel show. And that's what it is. Dylan Mulvaney is so over the top in every woman's stereotype that it is a minstrel show at this point. He's putting on, and I do use the word he intentionally because he is a man.
He's a man
putting on woman face,
prancing around, making fun of women is what he's doing.
Yeah, and then Bud Light, trying to diversify its audience like that, not expecting the backlash, and the backlash has been pretty intense. I think it's shaken Bud Light a little bit, and I think it's shaken a couple of other companies. The key to having an effect, though, is maintaining it. Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, look, Jack Daniels has done this with, the drag queens, and this other company that you patronize has done this. Okay, that's not the point. The point is, since, the right has to fight back, what they need to do, and I think they're doing this, it's a matter of can it be sustained, is pick one company and make an example out of it. Pick one company and bring it down the tubes, and do not let it be revived. A lot of the NFL stuff, people, it was good for half a season. And then people got tired of it and said, I like to watch football, I like to drink beer. So the right is not very good at sustaining such things. But the reason these companies do this stuff with like the Dylan Mulvaneys and the RuPauls of the world is because activists such as Mulvaney, activists such as RuPaul and others shriek very loudly about their cause. It's not about tolerance, it's about forced celebration. And by yelling at these companies, the companies are like, well, those libertarian type folks on the right, they're going to be quiet and just buy our stuff anyway. So we'll play this up and then maybe that the folks who are screeching at us will go away. Well, they pushed a little bit too far, and now the larger majority, the folks who make up their target demographic, have said, whoa, all right, enough of this shit. All right, we are going to start to push back. We're going to start to make our voice heard. And I think it's spooked the companies a little bit, and it should. It needs to spook them a little bit. Look, when I go to a company for any kind of beverage, any kind of food, I'm not looking for their thoughts on the culture wars. All right. I get enough of that shit everywhere else. All right. I go there to escape. I go there to eat a bag of chips. I go there to, drink, a soda. I go there to buy some shoes, which reminds me of a funny cross on this. Somebody said, well, what's the difference between this and when Nike was pumping up Colin Kaepernick about kneeling for the national anthem? I was like, dude, two completely different target audiences. Nike sells itself to young minority men who are already in the demographic of having suspicion of the police. For the most part, that's Nike's core demographic. Bud Light goes after frat boys and rural country boys, and they're not into the trans community shoving stuff in their face and saying that they have to somehow disbelieve, 100,000 to 150,000 years of the way mammalian biology works. Be told that they have to accept certain things that are just flat out patently false and endanger real women. I believe that the term for a lot of this is autogynephilia, which is men who will get off dressing as women. It gives them a sexual thrill. It gives them a fetish, and they don't have to actually go out and act out, doing something with other people. It's like a voyeur. The act itself is the fetish because the act itself is what provides the thrill to them. And then I also went back and said, hey, by the way, why don't you take the campaign that they're using with Dylan Mulvaney and try it with Nike and see how it plays with the young minority male audience? I'm betting it's not going to go over very well.
Oof. God, I'm tired of this subject. The fact that we're even fucking talking about it, it's insane to me. I have a little different, I don't know. You haven't really expressed your day-to-day thoughts. I know that you're a live and let live guy like I am.
Usually, yes.
Yeah, you want to keep that at arm's length. The very first transsexual person I ever saw is when I was clerking for a family practitioner when I was in college, and it was in a small little logging town. And there was a man that came in, and I was probably in his 50s, and he was probably 6'5". He had probably size 14 feet. And he was wearing like a grandma outfit, wig. He looked like, what was
Medea?
the transsexual John Lithgow in World According to Garp?
Oh, never saw it.
Yeah, he plays a transsexual in that. And he looked about as convincing as John Lithgow did in drag. But this guy had ruined his family, alienated his kids and his grandkids. I mean, because I did the history and physical, I did the H&P, and was sitting there now. And the guy, I'm going to admit, I mean, I was taken aback, but this was somebody who wasn't in there for, I don't know if he was getting hormone therapy or not there. I doubt it. But it was in there for some reason. And, I did feel a lot of compassion towards this person because of their life and how they were living. But at the same time, I knew this person was deeply, deeply mentally ill. And it came across not just because of that, because in a lot of ways. And so I had even more compassion because I'm like, okay, you thought you were living in hell, but now you've basically made a decision that's ruining your life, your family, and all that kind of thing. So I had that kind of experience, and I've known some because of where I've lived. I've lived in probably a little bit more liberal meccas than you have over the years. I've known a few folks that are very, very serious about their transsexualism, very serious about it. It doesn't take away my personal belief that it's a mental illness and it's delusional, and that you literally can't change your gender. You can't. It doesn't matter if you whack it off, chop it off, get something built. It doesn't fucking change the DNA. I'm sorry. That is, and just real quick, I don't want to beat this subject up. Two things. This Mulvaney fuck. This is not a transsexual. This is a gay guy who's out there making fun of women. I'm sorry. Shoving an fucking V8 ice cube up your ass and letting it melt does not make you a woman, bud. Okay. It just doesn't. This is a person who is mocking, in my opinion, takes these effeminate characteristics, blows them up like a lot of these very flamboyant gay people do, and makes a mockery out of it. I cannot believe that women, after all of this women's suffrage and, you know, the rising tide of women independence, not arguing any of that, fucking put up with this. If any one of you supports this, what is wrong with you? Do you not see this? You don't have to go along with this leftist crowd. Call it what it is. This fucking piece of shit is a narcissist, an untalented narcissist who is demeaning women, period. Demeaning women. And if you don't see it that way, I don't care what your subjective opinion is. You're wrong. You're fucking wrong. Okay?
Well, first of all, there's a dimorphism I can put into my own feelings on this. On the one side, look, I have nothing but compassion for people who are going through this. I can't imagine what it would feel like
I can't either.
In the wrong body.
I can't either.
And what I want to figure out ways to help them overcome that. Much like I would want to help an anorexic who's starving themselves because they feel they're too fat. You don't play into that and simply say, yes, you know what, you are too fat, you need to starve yourself.
Exactly.
You know, you do approach it with compassion. I want them to get help. I want them to be able to overcome this so they can truly accept themselves for who they are. So I have tremendous compassion for that and want to help. But on the other side of this, I'm not going to just forcibly celebrate a mental condition because you think not doing so is mean. That's not the way that I operate. You know,
that is not the way you operate. Wait, you operate.
I think you're pointing the wrong way, but okay. There we go. Where was I going with this? Oh,
I just fucked you all.
Appreciate you throwing me off track there. You're the one that wants to upend society. All right. So, you know, you are the one that has to prove its merits. It's not up to me to disprove the merits or to prove why it is not healthy for society. And again, we've gone from tolerance to forced celebration, which is what that is. It's not a matter of live and let live at that point. It's a matter of I have no choice but to fight back. Otherwise, you're going to force me to try to accept that, which I can't. And the last part of this is when we talk about Dylan Mulvaney and the mockery and why are women putting up with this? I do think there are a lot of women are a lot more agreeable than men are. It's just how we're built. I think they're afraid of being called names. They're afraid of not being seen as nice people. But when you come right down to it, they're resubjecting themselves to the patriarchy. They are saying these men who are pretending to be women are even better at it than real women, so we must listen to them and accept their dominance. I mean, you look at Megan Rapinoe, for example, saying now that she's retired, you should allow men to play on the women's team. The women's team got beat 5-2 by a bunch of junior high school boys.
Sue Bird's right there. They stand out for the Seattle Storm, the basketball player.
Yeah,
she's right there with her too. Retired.
You could take the worst team in the NBA and play the WNBA champions, and the worst team in the NBA would beat them by 120 points. And that might be understating it.
I think you're being conservative.
There are differences, and women have fought so hard to take certain places in society, and then to cede that ground right back to a bunch of narcissistic men who want to intrude on their spaces. It does baffle me a little bit. I think women need to speak up a little bit more and ask, like Riley Gaines, for example, the Kentucky swimmer, why are we tolerating men coming in and shoving women aside once again?
Yeah, I wish she was like, I don't know, 20 years older, and then I could have children with her. I'm
not going to say what just came to mind.
No, I have a lot of admiration for Riley Gaines. I do. And hopefully she wins a huge fat lawsuit and when she was assaulted at that college. Yep. I just want to take issue with one thing you said. You used the word agreeable and women in the same sentence. So that's weird.
I didn't say that they were agreeable. I said they want to be seen as agreeable.
I agree with your central point on that. I think real women, not the ones that pretend women, but I think any one of the reasonable women that I know would admit that part of the gender differences is that desire, that nurturing, want to, emotional, much more the emotional mind than the logical mind, if we're talking dialectical behavioral stuff here. And that's great. I think that's amazing. That's part of what I think a woman's beautiful role in this world is. So I think that part of their nature does want to be inclusive, if that's kind of what you're saying. I believe I'm putting it in my words and agreeing.
You're right.
And there's just so much. I mean, any woman that supported Leah Thomas may have done it as a knee-jerk reaction, but this was a pervert who wanted to see naked chicks in the locker room as a sexual fetish, and maybe one of the biggest narcissists in the history of this country. Been awful quiet about Leah Thomas lately, which is good, because fuck off and go to hell, Leah Thomas. I really think you're a bad human being. Or Liam, or what was the name? What was the actual name of this person? Anyway.
Its last name was Phil Thomas. I don't remember
I don't know. It was some type of manly name that got contracted down to Leah. But anyway, we can move along here. I think we've made our point. I just want to point out that Russ and I are the guardians, the knights errant of true women everywhere. And I'm being stupid, but that's true. I really do. You and I are old-fashioned dudes. I'm very old school in my, I make a lot of jokes, and they're jokes, and jokes are based in truth. That's what makes them funny. But I have a lot of female friends, and I can tell you they're all strong. I don't agree with all of them. I have an ex-boss that I work for that used to butt heads with a female that's on my Facebook page. Oh my God, we butted heads for so long, but then we kind of just got tired of butting heads and had a conversation one day. I admire the hell out of her, and she's pretty left. She's an African-American female who's very active in the community, but I love her to death, and she's very cool and very supportive of everything I do, and vice versa. Beautiful woman, beautiful person. It's very easy for me to admire women. There's traits in women that I don't have, that I wish I had more of. And you're married to a very strong, wonderful woman yourself. So you get it. And, quite frankly, you chicked up. You got lucky meeting her. And I'm not saying that.
I don't deny that.
I am not insulting you in any way, shape, or form. God bless you. I think that's wonderful. I see this, and it doesn't, you're right. Does it affect me? Fuck no. I'm not a phobe, because I'm not scared of you people. Okay. But you piss me off because you're narcissist. And now you're going against something that I hold sacred, which is to protect women, which is to put women on a pedestal a little bit. Because that's what men are supposed to do, because we have that ability, and to make sure that women are safe. Okay. This is the opposite of that. I know we don't have time to get into this, but my buddy, good old Matt What's His Face podcast, I listened to when I was
Walsh, the lumberjack.
Matt Walsh. I know, I was making fun of myself. I listened to his podcast, and he mentioned the prison, the Purdy Women's Correction Center here in Washington State, and the men who are saying that they're women, and the abuse. They actually have undercover comment from one of the women in the prison that they had to keep secret so she doesn't get retribution, talking about the abuse these women are subjecting the women to in the corrections facility. That's a topic for another time, but this is the kind of pain that these people can cause. And at the very best, they're really making fun of you. Dylan Mulvaney is just making fucking fun of you. So anyway, before we break for commercial, Russ, I got a new feature that you don't know about yet. Yeah, no, it's not bad. It's called Koop's Cold Hard Facts. And I'm going to introduce a cold hard fact to our listening audience that may not be popular, but it's supported by statistics. There's these things called maths and things called, what's it called? Logic and critiquing thinking that exist in the world. There's this thing called objective truth. And how I like to describe objective truth is that it's the thing you hit your foot on in a dark room. It's going to be there regardless of whether you want to see it or not. So here, let me pull up, you're going to love this. It's a PowerPoint slide.
Awesome. I have no experience with PowerPoint whatsoever.
You don't. Let me pull up a PowerPoint slide. Let me pull this up, and let's see. This is, and here it is. Hey, look, I figured out how to get both of us on the screen this week. Are you proud of me?
I am.
I could easily master this in like a few days if I wanted to jump into it, but I think my clunky behavior as producer is more entertaining than most of what we do. So here's this week's, and feel free to briefly comment on this, Russ. This is nothing new to you, but I heard a stat the other day again, and I heard one of these little guys, these politically active guys from the left, talk about the same old with all the white people want to own the guns and all the cops are hunting black people. So yeah, let me just counter argue that. The average number of, for the podcast listeners only, I'll go ahead and read the slide, which I normally wouldn't do. As you know, Russ, you talk the slide, you don't read the slide. For those of you out there who are not familiar with how to give a briefing. Average number of unarmed black men who have been killed by law enforcement per year per average. I did a per average. I did the raw statistics myself. I did the maths myself. That's that thing you do with numbers. It's the actual building blocks of the entire universe. And for the years 2005 through 2021, I was able to pull numbers up. Okay, and I actually have my sources on here on the screen in a sec. Russ, do you have a guess?
I've actually seen the stat.
Okay.
The last numbers I got it for were, I believe, it was either 2019 or 2020, and the number of unarmed African-American men who were killed by police that year was between 10 and 26 or 10 and 27. And that depended on how you define the word unarmed, because
yes,
unarmed.
good.
Yeah. Did they lack a gun, or were they grabbing for a cop's weapon? Were they using a car to try to run somebody down? It really depends on how you define unarmed, but it was between 10 and I believe 27 or so.
Okay. Yeah. Well, if you take into account, this is the funny thing, because a lot of the left's talking points on this, before I reveal the number, they will take the stat that doesn't allow for things like cars or a weapon picked up, like during a scuffle with cops. If they pick up a rock and start going at a cop, throwing it at a cop, something like that. There's a lot of filters to this. Funny how they don't count cars as weapons, but yet you can go to prison for life for vehicular homicide.
Yeah.
That's the title of the crime, vehicular homicide. Just want to point that out. So averaging out those numbers, it's kind of shocking. It's shocking, Russ. There it is. 18.
Yep.
Per year.
About halfway in between what I said.
Yep, it is. You got the mean. So
now that's real quick. That's not to excuse when it does happen, especially when it happens maliciously. Like, for example,
absolutely.
The cop in Charleston that tried to plant his own stun gun on a man who was running away and shot him in the back. Those cops should absolutely be prosecuted. I still give law enforcement the benefit of the doubt, but when it does happen maliciously, absolutely, it's a tragedy. Unfortunately, I don't remember the source for this. I'm sure I could find it online when I look, but the average liberal thinks those numbers are way higher. And we're talking like around, I believe it was somewhere around a quarter of liberals believed it was between 1 and 5,000 per year.
Yeah, it's insane. It's
much
insane.
Like the number of liberals who for some reason thought that your chances of going to the hospital if you got COVID were over 50%.
Yeah, it's crazy. And even people on the so-called right think the number is much higher because of what they hear in the media all the time. Now, important disclaimer, and I'm being very serious about this. Out of the 18, am I happy with this number? Fuck no. This number should be 0, or a couple here or there, because you're right, there are disgusting cops, or there was an accidental discharge or something. I get it. Murphy's going to come into here, and there's a bunch of permutation. 18's too many, in my opinion. But it's not 5,000. It's not cops are out there.
It's not 50.
It's not 50. There's 59,000 law enforcement officers out there daily on shift right now, and 18 a year. That the statistics are really fucking low. Okay, almost they are not statistically significant, as we say in the Lean Six Sigma world. It would not be a statistic. This would be a 6 sigma, almost. Pretty much. There's at least a 5 sigma value here, which means your variation is very, very, very small. If you were manufacturing airplane parts, you would be fine with the statistic failure rate, by the way. Okay. I don't mean to sound crass, but I'm just talking math here, talking statistics. Now, I got one more stat to throw at you, Russ. One near and dear to my heart. The average number of vet suicides.
In what?
That's a good question. Per day.
The number I've heard bandied about most frequently is 22.
Okay.
But when you, real quick caveat on this.
Yeah, go.
When you reveal the number and we discuss it, I have a feeling I'm going to have a different take on this than you're expecting.
Okay, fine. I want to give a little bit of background on this first. I did get this from a primary source, which was, and I have it up here. Basically, it was the report on veteran suicide that the Veterans Administration hires firms to do very, very deep statistical studies. You talk about the expert in the field, of course. People can badmouth the VA, but they're very good at a lot of things, and they're very good at mental health and tracking these kind of statistics. Very, very good at it. Let me just give you a few things about soldier suicide. Now, fortunately, the rates have dropped in the last couple of years. The rates saw their highest. Their peak, 2013 and 2018, for some reason, were the peak years that saw the most, and we're talking per veteran. The veteran population has dropped by 31% in the last 5 years because veterans die. Okay, and there's not any new veterans because we're not at war right now. So it's a solid state, right? It's a zero-sum population that only gets smaller over time. Fortunately, suicides, by virtue of the actual act, you're going to have less over time in a closed system. Okay, that's just scientifically and statistically accurate. However, it is the still second leading cause of death. We're talking anything for veterans under the age of 45. The second leading cause of death in veterans under the age of 45. The reason it isn't as high that veterans over 45 is obvious. Older veterans die of things like heart disease and cancer and liver failure and a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay, so when we take that average from 2009, I went that far back, to 2022. I was able to dig up the stats for 2022. The VA does a great job cataloging these, and there's other things too. Can you take, well, you already guessed, you heard 22.
That's the number I've heard bandied about. Okay.
It's the same number that unarmed black men die per year, soldier suicides per day. 22 was accurate several years ago when that was going around. That was the statistics from the year before. That's not an inaccurate number, but it's not the average over the course of 12 years is how far back I went. Again, National Veteran Suicide Prevention Annual Report 2022. I apologize. Let me take that back. I went to 2021 in my statistics. So I said 2022 earlier. Your comments?
I have some takes on this that are probably not going to be popular, either with you or with portions of our audience. First of all, let me caveat, and I got to do I hate doing the display about thing, but I'm going to do it. Obviously, any amount of veteran suicide is too high. I get that. I've been around. I know, I have personally known of 2 people in the military who committed suicide, one during a deployment to Iraq, and one was a former commander of mine at Fort Leavenworth. Suicide is awful. It shatters people. So I'm not minimizing that. I want that understood. That said, I am of the opinion, and let me get through this before you jump down my throat, Koop. I'm of the opinion that I think too many veterans use the number to try to gain sympathy. And here's because when you look beyond the numbers, and please feel free to refute me if you have the facts in front of you. But my understanding is the suicide rate in the veteran community is actually lower than it is in the civilian populace at large.
That's not the case at all. I'll give you that statistic.
I need to go look that up because everything I have read previously says that it's actually slightly lower. And a large number of the suicides, when they happen, they're happening with veterans who are in the same, what's the way I'm trying to phrase this? They're going through the same life issues that the civilian populace is. What I mean is financial issues, spousal issues, divorce issues, issues with children. That's not to minimize any of this. But I do get frustrated sometimes when it's almost thrown out as a trump card sometimes by some folks. And I have always been of the opinion that the military community, which I include vets in that. I include vets in the military community, obviously, not just serving active duty folks. I'm talking about like folks who have served and are no longer serving. I'm not saying be strong, stand alone, but I've always been of the opinion we're not supposed to throw things out looking for sympathy. Now, that's not to say that we should not try to help veterans that are having issues. That's not to say that we shouldn't try to find ways to work through this. I'm simply saying that, and I'm not even saying you're doing this, Koop, but I have seen a number of veterans who have tried to gain the upper hand in discussions simply by saying, well, this is how awful things are. And I believe while bad, they are trying to make it sound more epidemic to gain the upper hand or gain some sympathy. I get that that's probably not a very popular opinion. I'm not trying to downplay suicide. There are people who have severe issues, obviously. The person who was a former commander of mine, I was the last person that I would have ever expected to commit suicide. He was always the happy, upbeat guy. It really gave me a different perspective on it. He was somebody that I admired, but I also had a childhood hero of mine who played for the Carolina Lightning soccer team commit suicide back in 2007, and that hit me hard as well. So my position's, I said, I'm not trying to downplay it. My position is a little more nuanced in how I think it's presented, but I also understand that people react very, very emotionally to me being, for lack of a better term, a little bit colder about it than some folks might prefer. So with that, Koop, I will let you now yell at me.
I'm not going to yell at you because I agree largely with what you're saying. I have a different perspective than you because I am far more active. And I don't mean this as a slight. It's just logistically true. I am far more active in the veteran community than you are. I mean, I spend. Just so people know, I have intention. Don't get me wrong. When I'm around veteran buddies and stuff, we still have a good time. But where I live, there's not, I'm not around the military folks like you would be if you live near a military base or something like that. And to be fair, I have intentionally separated myself from the military life because the way I view it is I did that for 24 years. It was great, but now I've moved on to something else. I want to keep in touch with buddies, but I'm not immersed in the veteran community as much as you are because I'm like, okay, I have a different phase of my life that I am trying to have. Yeah, I hear you. And I get, for those of you that think, I've said this before, there are just as many douchebags in the veteran community as there are at the people at large. One of the things that I have a really hard time with, and I've attacked a couple of people online for this, is you get a lot of YouTube channels now that show vets how to get 100% disability from the VA by lying about your symptoms, stuff like that, basically defrauding the taxpayers, things like that. A lot of that goes on.
Real quick on that, just so you know, I went back in to get reevaluated because for those who don't know, I have a chronic bronchitis that I was around the burn pits a lot. So I'm going back in to get reevaluated for that. But when I did, some folks were trying to say, well, we should put you in for PTSD as well. I'm like, dude, I don't have PTSD. I've never been evaluated for that. I appreciate you're trying to help me, but I'm not going to put in something that is not true,
right,
just to try to get more money. That's just not the way that I operate. So anyway, when you said that, it triggered that thought of, some folks I talked to being like, well, you should claim this. I'm like, no, that's not the way
it's true. That shit does happen. And it's actually fairly widespread among that. I mean, and there's a lot of people, of course, who exaggerate their service or they, do that. And there are a lot of people I've met a lot recently who, did 2 years or something like that, and they get full VA benefits. And, this is there's all different flavors. I guess my point to bring this number into play is, that the vet suicide issue and actually suicide in general is something that is near and dear to my heart for a lot of reasons. It's an awful thing when people feel it's just an indescribable amount of pain for family. It's an indescribable amount of pain these people are in. Whenever I hear somebody say, "Oh, you're fuck off if you say these people are weak or anything else," fuck off with that. Don't ever come and talk to me up face to face, because it won't go well for you. I don't listen to that shit. I know too many people. You've known too, because of my activity in the vet community. I had 5 people in 1 year that I knew or was close to that died of suicide in one 12-month period of my life, and that was back in 2020. That was a very horrible, horrible year. That was the same year I lost my mom and la 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 la. It was a fucked off year. 5 people. When I felt responsible for a couple of them because I was 10 minutes late getting there. So I'm haunted by that. So I guess my main reason for bringing this up was I agree with you that a lot of people use their military service as a crutch. They do. It happens out there, folks. I hate to tell you that. But this is just an astonishing number if you want to look at numbers.
Want to compare the supposed prevalence that the media gives to certain actions.
Yeah, and I realize this suicide thing is a thing that I pay close attention to, and kind of one of my pet issues. And I'm not trying to force that down anybody's throat, just to make sure, but I just really want to bring this to light. 18. Just remember 18 per day, 18 per year. Next time you hear somebody hammering on statistics. And I will back this up. And one quick thing, Russ, statistical, I got it right here because I thought it was important. On average, in 2021, I didn't do a rolling average. I didn't have time preparing for the pod as far as this goes, but 57.3% higher among vets than non-veteran population suicide, 57.3% higher. So
let me go dig into that number myself.
I have the PDF of all the files that I've been using for research. And
I get it. You know that I like to also look stuff up for myself.
Yeah, go for it.
That's contrary to what I had heard. I'm not disputing its veracity. I'm simply saying I want to go back and just do some of that research myself, because I may have been wrong.
No problem.
Heard, but I want to see it.
I appreciate it about you.
Yeah.
Let's with that, since we were really depressing this part of it, and we're probably not going to have a chance to get your Tennessee thing because we've been rolling for hour and a half almost already. But we'll take a quick break. We'll come back after an important commercial message. I can't even talk. That's what happens. And we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. You know how handsome we are.
Especially Koop.
My God, you got the Viking chieftain and whatever Russ is.
Well, my doppelganger died 30 years ago. So if River Phoenix had lived.
I was thinking you more look like you come from the Shire.
Well, they can't see how tall I am on this video, so no.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying you look short on the video. That's why I said it. All right. You don't look like Bilbo Baggins. You don't.
I thought I was more like Gandalf, but okay.
All right. Hey, Russ, we got another new feature.
Yes. Yay. Hit me with it.
Oh, you're going to love this. Okay. So let me pull this up. Hey, it's the good news is we're going to use PowerPoint again. All right. You ready for this?
Okay.
You're ready. All right. Here we go. We got a new feature called Koop's Fetid Fruit of the Mind. Now, do you remember Deep Thoughts by Jack Handey back in the days when Saturday Night Live was good?
I do, because Ben Shapiro now does Deep Thoughts with Kamala Harris.
Oh, I don't remember. Does he do that on the pay only channel or something?
Yeah, but it's not all the time. Usually it's like once a week or so that he'll do Deep Thoughts with Kamala Harris.
That's a great idea. I wish I'd have figured that out. I wish I'd have. That makes me mad. That's something I would come up. Damn you, Ben Shapiro. Damn you. No, well, you know what, Ben Shapiro? I got Jesus. All right. Koop's Fetid Fruit of the Mind. So, Russ, these are far more intellectual than anything you would get with Deep Thoughts by Jack Handey, but I just wanted to share these, and I'm going to have to read these, unfortunately, because for our pod listeners, not going to be able to see yet another PowerPoint slide. presentation here on the Two Grumpy Bastards podcast. So, Russ, I noticed the Whole Foods grocery store sells sliced fruits, vegetables, and other foods and parts like pizza, pie, and quiche. Isn't that false advertising?
You need a therapist. Oh, you got one. Never mind. I'm reminded of the thing with the quiche where the guy goes into a diner. Waitress comes over, says, "What will it be?" He says, he says with a wink, "How about a quickie?" She slaps him. He gets up. His friend across the table says, "I think it's pronounced quiche."
That's a good one. Damn it. That should have made it to dad jokes. That was good. That's all right. I've already got my dad jokes for the next time we have a dad jokes duel. All right. So, Russ, I'm a logger, but you ever think we cut down birdhouses to make a whole bunch of birdhouses?
I don't know. Shop kids got to do something.
I mean, think about it. It's kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next, fetid fruit of the mind. Thoughts that keep me up at night. And this one, I think you'll appreciate. I think you'll appreciate this one. If we ever cure all diseases and aging, we're all going to die horrific deaths.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's something that was brought up in church today is the moment you are conceived, you begin to die.
This is very true. I actually do think about this because I do think that eventually our technology will be so that aging is reversible. I can go off on centromeres and a whole bunch of other stuff that it doesn't need to happen. And, if as we progress, diseases will be cured. So that just means we're going to die like in auto accidents and, being thrown in chippers. Perhaps with, what was that movie that came from the 70s, Scanners, where people were able to psychically blow up people's heads, things like that. So I do worry about it.
Yeah. Sorry. So I have my better half had some directives for me.
All right. Did you tell her we're almost done?
What's that?
You tell her we're almost done?
Yes.
Okay. And she's like, "What? You're on there with Koop for 2 hours? Ain't no rants." All right. Next one. This one actually does disturb me. Cheese is actually a loaf of milk.
I have never thought of it that way, but that's funny.
I did. I think about it all the time, especially with that meme that I put on Facebook lately about, enchanting a woman with a slice of cheese.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. All right. And I think this might be the last one. You'll be happy about that. I don't know if this ever occurred to you. I'm a big fan of ancient Greek history. Was exposed to a lot of it in college, and I still read. I do the classics, Greek classics. I wish I knew Greek. That'd be cool to do it in the actual language. But I have such an admiration for the Greek culture and the art, and oh my God, revolutionary thinking, morals and ethics, and Plato's Republic and all that. But here's the thought that really, really screws me up. What if all the ancient realistic Greek statues are really just Medusa's victims?
I saw a horror movie once of the statues move and come after you when you're not looking at them.
Yes. And anybody who's seen like the old school stop motion movies like Jason and the Argonauts and all those awesome ones. Oh man, that just scared the shit out of me, all of those. Anyway,
real quick, when I first saw Clash of the Titans and Medusa was stoning people, yeah, it kind of freaked me out a little bit. Of course, I was 9 at the time.
Yeah, that was a badass. Yeah, I remember that Medusa scene. Yeah, that was a badass one. And that was oh God, what was the name of that actor? He was on LA Law and he was a big deal for like 10 minutes there. Anyway, he was like the hot hunky dude there for a while. Anyway, I think that's the last fetid fruit of the mind for this week, Russ. So awesome. Thank you for your participation, and I'm sure this will get you all thinking out there. All right, get to our last segment here, because Russ has got a honey-do list that he's got to get to, and I really don't have anything at all, but that's okay. I gotta produce this pod in the.
I have been summoned.
You have been summoned by a force much greater than your own.
Yes.
All right, let's see here. What are we going to do? Oh, we're going to do one book and one movie/TV series that we recommend. Why don't you start with the TV series, and then I'll go TV series, and then we'll go book.
It's a little cheesy in terms of how it's written and how it's portrayed, but It's a new one I've started watching on Peacock, and I think it comes on Sci-Fi Channel as well. But it's called The Ark. Basically, the Earth has gone to complete shit, and we're sending out spaceships, arcs, to try to get to other stars. The first one that went out did not have faster than light capability, so it was like a sleeper ship. And the first episode, something happened on the ship where the entire command staff died. So you got a bunch of, newbie lieutenants and like second deputy engineers in charge, and they're trying to figure out what happened and still make it to the destination and work out through all the conflicts. I don't know any of the actors that are on it. They're mostly a bunch of newbies. There's my favorite character on the show is this big burly, I believe he's an Irish guy, but he's like the navigator. He's got a toxin in his blood that is slowly killing him because of some stuff they released in the atmosphere back on Earth to try to decarbonize the atmosphere that didn't work right. But I've enjoyed it. They're through 12 episodes, I think, so far. Mm-hmm. There was a brief couple episodes of a murder mystery. There was a couple episodes of a coup on the ship. They've encountered some other stuff out in space that is obviously a threat. They're dealing with the couple of characters that have God complexes about how they're the only hope for humanity. So it's an interesting show. I enjoy it as long as you don't try to take it too seriously. You'll have fun with it.
I will try that. I will look into that. I don't know why I'm not familiar with that, being a sci-fi nut that I am. Okay, thank you for that recommendation. I'm going to go in the Wayback Machine. I've been rewatching a series that I watched in the past that I didn't have an appreciation for because the actor who plays the main character, I didn't really like. I thought he was kind of a pussy, and I didn't know why he was playing such a strong protagonist. Although the series, now that I rewatch it, does a good job of evolving his character from kind of being a pussy to being a really great leader. And this is the series that you probably saw called Falling Skies.
Yes, although I enjoyed it a lot more at the beginning than I did at the end.
It gets a little wacky at the end. I'm actually, I've been watching it here in the last couple of weeks. I'm on the very last episode. And so I'll be watching that tonight to conclude that so I can go on to something else. But it's actually, it holds up. Noah Wiley is the actor that plays the main character. He starts out, he was a history professor. The aliens invade. They're destroying everything. And then he ends up joining the militia that's formed Second Massachusetts militia. He teaches at one of the hoity-toity colleges as a military history professor, gets a commission, kind of like in the old days when you just get a commission. I think they were using Richard Chamberlain as the model there, because he was a teacher, a history teacher at Bowdoin College, and got a direct commission and became one of the most legendary leaders in the Civil War and in American history. But it's 5-year span, and it kind of takes it through, and his character really actually develops. He was like in one of those doctor shows, and he was kind of a pussy, and I didn't like him. His character develops a lot. You got some interesting, I'm going to tell you right now, I forgot what a complete fucking babe Moon Bloodgood is. Oh yeah. My God. She's a goddess. I forgot how beautiful. Anyway, she eats up the screen and even with no makeup, all tattered from killing aliens and shit. Amazing. So that's my recommendation. I think it holds up. The CGI isn't by today's standards, but you can kind of put that aside. I can't imagine how much money they spent on each episode, because they did a really, really good job. And although some of the military stuff is kind of annoying, it's the way they're wearing the ACUs with the Mandarin collar tight and the patch is all fucked up. And then, some of the terms that they use are not Army terms. Supposedly, this Army officer uses, what's the guy's actor's name? I like him. He played the defensive coordinator and Remember the Titans.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I can't remember his name though.
He's a really good actor. But anyway, some good characters. Cool story arc. You have the really bad guy, Pope, and who's the arch nemesis of the good guy. So you got definitely a hero's journey, an archetype in this, a lot of Jungian type archetypes in this. Really good. I was actually pleasantly surprised. I remember the two brothers really annoyed me at the beginning of the series, that his sons, but they became, as they got older, better actors and better characters too. So anyway,
Will
recommend
Patton.
it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, he's Will Patton. He's really good. He plays a weird character. I don't know why he had to have a ponytail though. That was weird during the whole series. That was kind of odd. Maybe, I don't know. And it was 5 years, so it wasn't like he was doing a movie or something and had to keep it for it. Okay. Anyway, go ahead. We're going on to your favorite, not favorite, but recommended book.
Ready Player One. If you've seen the movie and think you know it all, you don't. The movie and the book are only about 25%, 20 to 25% related. If you were a child of the 80s, it's all, pizza parlors, the stuff in the Oasis, pizza parlors, video games, pop culture, music, TV shows, sitcoms, movies. It's a good fan service kind of a thing. That the tests where you get the keys in Ready Player One, the book, are completely different than they are in the movie. They're a lot more in depth, a lot more nerd knowledge. So if you enjoyed the movie, go read the book. You'll have a ball. It's different enough where it's almost a different story.
Before we get to my choice and to the end of this podcast, I'm going to tell you there's another secret phrase hidden within this podcast. Another secret phrase for somebody to go onto our Facebook page and tell us what it is for cash and prizes. Okay, not cash, just prizes. Just wanted to put that out there because if people are listening by now, they deserve to know the secret phrase, which is somewhere hidden in this podcast once I produce it. Okay, my book, and you're going to hate me because this isn't an entertaining book, but it's one of my 5 favorite books ever written, is Democracy in America by Alexi.
I like that one.
Yeah, by Alexi de Tocqueville. Very quickly, because I could spend literally 3 hours talking about this book. It very much shaped my ideals about libertarianism. Frenchman who did a tour of the Americas, specifically he was touring prisons and penitentiaries in 1831. Yeah, because back then we were supposedly the model of liberalism when it came to our criminal justice system, which obviously isn't fucking true anymore. He published this in 1835, and it really is one of the 2 or 3 greatest, I think, standards and bases of the libertarian ideal. And it didn't just talk about prisons. It was something he wanted to bring back to France, going, this is what they're doing. Because France at that point in 1835 was coming to the end of the aristocracy and kind of coming to the shift towards democracy. And that was really his point in writing, but it kind of became the handbook for libertarianism. And some of the things that he came up with, he talked about entrepreneurism, and entrepreneurism is a driving force in the culture, but it had to have a moral core in order to be successful. Because he talked about how a democracy could become a radicalization of equality if not underpinned by a moral core. What does that sound like? What does that sound like? A radicalization of equality, meaning that you can take that whole tenet of equality and push it so that certain people can enjoy equality. Now you hear the word equity. So he predicted this back in 1835, that you could actually have radical democracy turning into something like that. He said, quote, "It can lead into an ignorance by despotic rule, sheer democracy." So the American system was set up as a democratic republic to actually counter that sheer democracy. But we've turned into that. We've turned into a democracy by the mob. Talked a little bit earlier about how AOC is saying, oh, ignore the Supreme Court rulings. We're headed in that direction. It's kind of funny, just real quick. They're enjoying the system that created them, all these people decrying the American system, and they're only be able to decry the American system and be in their position in society because of the system. One of the things that I found interesting when I reread it, and I'm going to reread it again sometime this year, was that he predicted Russia and the United States of America were going to become the 2 supreme super world powers. I thought that was amazingly prescient in the 19th century, early 19th century, to be able to predict that. I mean, how and why, I don't know. This guy's like he's a genius. And like I said, he's somebody that I admire. One final point on that, as much as we may hate to admit it, we are largely who we are because of the French. We might be children of England, and we are still children of England to a very large extent with our common law and customs and a lot of the other stuff. But if it hadn't been for a couple of key Frenchmen over history, and I count de Tocqueville for being incredibly influential because he was very, very, very fascinated by the Federalist democracy, the Jeffersonian democracy that was evolving in the United States. He really pushed, back in the mid to late 19th century, libertarianism really was the order of the day. Go West, young man, manifest destiny, all that kind of stuff. That was all based in libertarian principles. So I just wanted to put that out there. Democracy in America, de Tocqueville, one of the most influential books, I think, in political history and history.
Absolutely. No, I agree 100%. I need to go back and reread it. It's been a decade since I've looked at it.
Well, good. I know you got to run. I hate to leave off abruptly, but we're gonna get off
before I get into more trouble.
Yeah, before you get into more trouble, I got to go eat anyway. So we take those into account. Keep fighting, guys. Keep fighting the good fight. So I'm just gonna say from me, as usual, stay on target, and keep your focus and stay wokeless.
Amen.